Today's going to be a real quick video because we're just going to look at the answer to that quiz question I asked last time. Welcome to the New School Singer. I'm your host, Mr. Opera, and let's move this right along. We're talking about resonance, and I'm going to skip all the intro and go straight to the quiz question. Hopefully today the sound's going to work a little bit better, and I'm also going to exaggerate the parts of the sound, shall we say, that I'm going to mess with. Your job is to try to figure out what are the differences in resonance between these sounds. I'm going to play a bunch of different sounds. Think of any difference in resonance that you can. So let's start with sound number one. Again, sound number one. Let's give it another shot. Okay. Now sound number two. Sound number three. Let's do more than two this time. So what if I do this to the sound? And what about this? Or this? What are the differences in resonance? Let's go to the answer. The answer is it was completely a trick question. So if I go through a similar sequence as what I was just doing, and I start changing things in the same way, and I ask you the question again, what is the difference in resonance between any of these sounds? And we can get the answer by looking at our spectrograph here. So if you look at the peaks that we have, as I play around with these things, and I can remove the vocal tract for you here. So if I take that away, and let's say we move me out of the way a little bit, and I make these same changes, watch those peaks. They don't change. It's a trick question in the sense that in real life, this doesn't happen. This isn't possible in real life. This is possible because I have this app that allows me to do such a thing as just changing the source signal that's going into the vocal tract, that's being resonated. Now, if I were to change something about, let's say, the shape of the vocal tract, so if I start moving these things around, now we see changes in resonance are predicted. And then if we play the sounds, we get changes in resonance. We get all these kinds of changes in resonance that we see in the form of these peaks. But all I was changing was this. So this little graph lets me put a different glottal pulse, or the source itself. It lets me just put in a different source to the same vocal tract shape. Now, the reason this isn't realistic is a little bit complicated. And it's something that people are just starting to talk about now in vocal pedagogy, which is a good thing. And unfortunately, I see some big misinterpretations of how this works and maybe overselling and some exaggerations about this. But essentially, in order to make these kinds of changes that we're seeing, where we change the shape of the wave, right? But we're not changing necessarily, well, we aren't changing at all the frequency of the wave. So if I go and I change the pitch here, right, that's just changing the frequency. But when I change these things, all I change is the basically the shape of this graph. And the top part of this graph, that's when the vocal folds are open. And then the bottom part of this graph is when the vocal folds are closed. So you can see if I make a change, let's say like this, right? Well, look how much of the graph now is not closed, or contact, shall we say. And look at how much of it is now covered by being open. And if I change something like this shape quotient, and it's easier to see if I, so when I'm changing this, well, look at this slope going from left to right. That's how long it's taking to open. And this is taking longer to open, even though the amount of time that it's actually closed isn't changing. And this is changing the amount of time it takes to close again, and how abrupt that is. And that again makes these things make change. I'll bring my pitch back up a little bit here. So changing the shape of this changes our sound, but it's not changing our resonance. The reason it's kind of a trick question is that in real life, this doesn't happen without actually changing the resonance. Because we have some interaction between the vocal folds themselves and the vocal tract, this sounds weird. It sounds unnatural to be able to just change the source like this, change the glottal flow pulse without having any kind of change in the resonance. That is weird, and that does make it a trick question. But at the same time, it helps us understand that there are limits to what resonance does. Even if we're talking about these sort of magic nonlinear interactions between the vocal folds and the vocal tract, yes, they are cool. Yes, they can give you patterns and shapes that are not possible otherwise. True. And that's all true. And they can also, these interactions can also make it easier on your vocal folds to get the job done. That said, you cannot ignore the source itself. You cannot expect nonlinear interactions to do everything for you, because a nonlinear interaction means that the vocal tract is interacting with the source, with the vocal folds. It means that what the vocal folds themselves contribute to this is a really big deal. You cannot start with 0 and multiply by any number to get any number other than 0. And if your source is weak, let's say it's not 0, but it's like from 1 to 10, it's a 0.5. Well, you can have the best resonance on the planet. You're still multiplying 0.5 by something. So please, as we go on into our talk of resonance, adjust your expectations a little bit. Resonance is not magic. Resonance is just resonance. And when we're talking about making a loud, clear sound, or basically when we're talking about any objective that we have with the vocal tract, we also have this source that we need to worry about. You cannot overlook training the source and having a strong source. And you cannot forget about making things like the ligament strong and getting strong muscles, or at least strong coordination of your muscles. And you cannot get something out of nothing.